Good day, everybody. Tom Block, Keith Jones, and Bob Ferrante, and it is Front Row Noles meets Seminole Sidelines. Gentlemen, how are we? Have we recovered?
That'll take a little longer, Tom. Thank you.
That's multiple consultations and visits and copays.
Exactly.
Enjoy
Bob?
my trips to Gainesville. That was maybe not my most enjoyable trip to Gainesville.
Yeah. Well, let's not start there. It is National Signing Day. I mean, just like we grew up with, here we are, first Wednesday in December, National Signing Day, just like it's always been, right? Bob, I got on a tangent on Sunday about this with Keith, and it's not anything different than Keith and I have talked about over the years. But if you are in charge of college football, you would put signing day where on the calendar?
That's just it. Everybody complains about where it is on the calendar. I'm not sure I've heard a great solution. The only thing I heard years ago was, could you go August 1st and put it before the high school football season? I know a lot of high school football coaches would like it to not be a distraction for their seniors, especially as coaches at the high school level are viewed as far as how their job performance goes with wins and losses. I don't know if that can work unless you give somebody an out if the college head coach then bails for another school, a la a transfer portal opening type of situation. I'm not sure there's a great calendar fix. It's a crazy thing across college football with the Lane Kiffin deal. There don't seem to be great solutions for the calendar, but I think we should be open ears to a lot of various proposals that can make things better.
Well, the answer to that one could be real simple. You make it August 1st, you sign, and then if your coach leaves, just like the players that are already there, even though you're not there yet, you have the opportunity to go into transfer portal.
And something I just thought of that I hadn't really processed, the reason the coaches didn't push for before the season, not from the PR talking points, but we know this is the reason. They didn't want to be locked into a kid that was really good as a sophomore and a junior and then didn't have a great senior year, or blew out his ACL or whatever. But in this NIL era, it seems like it'd be pretty easy to run off the kids you no longer want. They sign August 1st. They still have a scholarship offer at the end of the season, but lo and behold, their NIL package just went from six figures to the left of the decimal point to two figures to the left of the decimal point and two more to the right. And oh, look at that. Johnny's no longer going to come here and he's going somewhere else. That's just the reality of it. I mean, so I don't know that. I mean, does that make sense? It feels like now you could get rid of the guys you no longer want that blossomed too early or got hurt as seniors.
I think there's a concept to be played around with there, and we should note every other sport has an early signing day. November historically has been that window for college basketball, for baseball, for all the Olympic sports, right? So there is precedent there. I don't know what it could look like at the football level because we've seen so much roster turnover, but I think we're kind of all in agreement. You can say that an athlete can transfer, especially if a coach bails on you. So I think we need to look at it a little bit differently as far as this calendar. We've tried signing day in different windows. I think I like the transfer portal window in January for college football, but then again, it doesn't work for Florida State's academic calendar with as far as getting students in for that spring semester. That's going to be a really, really interesting thing when you've got portal window of January 2nd through 16th. And guys, I don't remember when classes start, but it's somewhere around the 6th, 7th, or 8th. I mean, we have a calendar that really doesn't function for college athletics, and it really doesn't function for a southern school like Florida State, too.
Keith, you had your eyebrow raising on some of that. Did you have a?
The classes start on the 7th. That argument to me isn't as valid as people want to make it, because you can start classes a week or two late, or you could go ahead and commit and come on and sign your paperwork when you become eligible. But I hear what you're saying. That it's a nuisance. It's not a big problem in my world, but what do I know?
What you're saying, Bob, is this is the one remaining place where school gets in the way for the student athletes in what is not really viewed as a student athlete world anymore in this world of college football. Because you could pretty easily say you could still transfer and you start classes over the summer, right?
Absolutely.
You still have to pass, make progress through your degree, but the spring doesn't matter. And it's not just Southern schools. Maybe it is Southern schools. I don't know. Maybe you're right on that. Northern schools tend to start later, but University of Miami starts probably 3 weeks later than FSU in January, right, for their semester. So that portal window works for them, but not for Florida State. And I was just looking at it. The drop ad calendar, I guess, goes a week after the 7th. Keith, does that sound right?
That's probably right. Yes.
11:59 p.m. on Monday, January 12th is when drop ad ends for regular students, Bob. You said January 16th is the portal window?
Yeah, I mean, again, they've bumped that back. It used to be in December. It used to be, I believe, right about this week last year, because it was in the middle of those conference championship games it was starting.
Interesting. All right, well, so it is signing day, which is not a day anymore. I don't know why we call it signing day. It's signing 3 days. It'll run through Friday. Florida State actually has, if it stays together, they've put together a pretty decent class. We're not going to get into the specifics of it, Bob, but it seems like it's bigger from a quantity standpoint and compared to what they've signed previously under Mike Norvell. And from a ranking standpoint, it's sitting in the top 15, which I know Florida State fans would love to go back to. Florida State's got the number 1 class. They're in the top 5 annually, and that is where you need to be if you want to be Georgia and Ohio State. But it is, just breaking it down, sort of the first half of Norvell's years here versus the second half. His classes were 22nd, 23rd, 20th, and 20th. In the last 3 years, 12th, 19th, and currently sitting 14th. That's the Noles 247 composite. So that is an uptick to some degree, for whatever that's worth. Is it worth anything?
I know fans don't want to hear this after a 5-7 season, but I just wrote a story the other day. I feel like Mike Norvell is right when he points to talent developed out of these last 2 classes. Again, that's true freshmen out of the 25 class, second-year guys, either redshirt freshmen or sophomores out of that 24 class. They do have about a dozen guys who were contributors. Again, that's Mike Norvell's term of contributing, and how it's kind of subjective, right? But when you look at the Makai Danzis, the Usman Chromas, Kevin Wynn, the Desir twins, Shamar Arnaud, there are a good number of guys there who are building blocks for the future. And I've argued, guys, that we're going to focus a lot on talent acquisition and the cost of talent acquisition. But I feel like you have to have the foundation too. You have to have these recruiting classes that you develop guys over time. Perhaps they're leaders, maybe not. But talent retention to me is just as important, if not more. And I think that's been a discussion point in the past. And if this is going to work for Mike Norvell, short-term, long-term, you have to retain a number of these first and second-year players to be foundational for 2026 and beyond.
And that is such a difficult proposition, because you're trying to figure out how much to pay an 18-year-old that has never actually put your jersey on. You know where he came from, you know what he looks like, you know the foundation of the program he's coming from at the high school level, but how do you put a price on that? I mean, that seems so unfair and unrealistic of an expectation. I mean, that's a crapshoot. You either get lucky or you get unlucky. I don't know how you could ever put it together in such a way that you would judge what a school is doing on a consistent basis for these freshmen. It's so, the spectrum and the bad versus the good is so wide. It's unrealistic, absolutely unrealistic.
It's what the market bears too, right? I mean, the marketplace jumps on you, and the cost of doing business has jumped on Florida State, where they were in the portal early and they didn't have to pay a lot. And then all of a sudden, everybody's paying a lot. That was the marketplace.
Yep.
I'm looking at the class from 2 years ago, and I would agree, Bob, and I don't dive deep into recruiting anymore. Keith and I's mantra. I don't care how many stars you have. Show it to me on a Saturday in the fall wearing the Florida State uniform, and then I'll assess whether it was a good signing or not, right? Which is another one. Keith and I have a lot of tangents and a lot of chapters to the book we're never going to write. But another one is, why don't you re-rank the recruiting classes on their way out? Although I don't even know if that one makes sense anymore, because now classes don't stay 3 and 4 years. They stay a year and they're gone. But if you look 2 years ago at some of the kids who came, and you got Charles Lester and Kai Bates in there, and they played a lot. LaWayne McCoy, who's somebody they're going to have to pay to keep around, he was really good this year. I mean, he showed it against Florida. To me, I don't recall him dropping balls. He didn't get many targets over the course of the year, but he was pretty consistent and reliable. You got the tight ends and he's now a defensive end, Amari Williams and Landon Thomas, Mekhi Danzy. So there's a decent amount of guys in that class from 2 years ago too. The position I didn't mention is in the trenches, and that really is the area where Florida State has not developed. Jake Weinberg's in the class from 2 years ago too, and obviously his season went the wrong way at the end. And that's plus all the guys from this class the last year. So it does feel like there's there's more than just a couple. I mean, I don't know how many guys. What is that? It's maybe could be half your starters, 10 to 12 guys out of those two classes in the coming year. Is that fair when you consider the names that you mentioned that were true freshmen this year?
Yeah, similar. When I wrote that story the other day, I had 11 guys, and then Jerry mentioned, well, you didn't mention Landon Thomas, for example. And I said, well, Landon was a guy who didn't get as many snaps, as many catches, but he was used out there as a blocker. I think there are enough guys you can build with and really say, I'd be curious to eventually ask Michael Alford, how much did Mike Norvell's success recruiting some of these classes, developing these last two classes, how much of an influence was that on the decision to keep him, to retain him, and say he is reversing after some of those earlier classes, 22 and 23, haven't been as productive yet. So I think it's an interesting discussion that we're seeing Mike Norvell and the staff recruit better, identify better, develop. Yes, maybe paying more money to acquire talent, right? That's the ball game. I think you've got enough guys, and you look at premium positions too. Like you might have corners coming back where you don't have to go into the transfer portal to grab a corner if you feel good about a Jabril Rawls and a Shamar Arnaud, for example. Well, that takes your expense of a transfer corner off the table. You put the money somewhere else, like an edge rusher or elsewhere. We know this team's going to need offensive tackles. You're spending money on offensive tackles, but not corner because you're developing in other ways. It takes a lot of pressure off of how you spend money, in my view. This would be a fascinating discussion with, a GM type of Martin Mayhew as far as how you allocate your money. But I think it's favorable how they've developed some of these high school players.
I'm glad you went. Hold your thought, Keith. Hold your thought. Let's do a break real quick, and then Keith has the floor when we come back on Front Row Noles.
Hey Seminole fans, Alumni Hall is your ultimate FSU shopping experience and has moved to a new location off Timberlane Road in Tallahassee. Shop FSU gear from Nike, Champion, New Era, Yeti, and more. Alumni Hall has Seminole gear for the entire family, plus accessories and gifts. Spend $150 and you'll earn $10 off your next purchase with their Hall Pass rewards. Stop by their new location on Timberlane Road near REI or shop anytime online at alumnihall.com. Alumni Hall, where Seminole fans shop.
Okay, welcome back. Bob transitioned to the general manager talk, which obviously Florida State's press release a couple weeks ago indicated they were going to look at some front office changes, and let's develop that. But Keith, go ahead with the point you wanted to make.
Well, I was just going to say, one of the things when you talk about having no luck, Coach Norvell has not had any luck. His first year is the COVID year. Then he wins 19 in a row and gets snubbed. But another thing that he's going to have to overcome is the perception twofold. Number one, when he lost the number one recruit in the country and Travis ends up going somewhere else and winning the Heisman Trophy. And number two, the first portal class, you have two first round or first and second round defensive players, and you have other things. I mean, everybody's going to point at that and say that, Norvell can recruit, but he can't bring them in, or he no longer has the touch in the transfer portal. I mean, those are going to be two things he has to overcome as well, in addition to all the other issues.
I think he's messaged that too, right? I think he's trying to message that through press conferences, especially that I called it an epic rant, but maybe that's unfair. But I think a couple of weeks ago when he did that, when he talked about those contributors out of these last two classes, I think he was speaking not to the media, but to recruits, moms and dads and fans when he's trying to message that he's not a portal guy. You have to be a portal guy. You have to be a high school development guy. I view it as an NFL model these days. You have to be acquiring free agents. You have to be drafting well. If you can't do both, you're not going to be a good program. And then it's about living within your budget.
So you mentioned before the break, Bob, and this has been talked about. You've been talking about it all season about a Martin Mayhew type coming into FSU. Is there any movement on this front office front? I was just looking through these rankings, and Derek Ray came in a couple years into Norvell's tenure, and Derek has caught a lot of the brunt of Florida State struggles in recruiting, so it's on him. They got to make changes. But if you look at the rankings that I just mentioned, clearly Florida State ticked up after Ray got here and got in place, right? Not as high as Florida State fans would like, but it's 6 to 10 spots better a year when you look at his fingerprints. I guess I'm curious, when do we expect changes? If there's changes coming, what might those changes look like? And how does a guy from the NFL, is that even the best fit to transition? And yeah, you've done capology, but do you really know who the best offensive tackle coming out of Miami-Dade County is this year? What does that role look like?
Right. These are all good questions. I think the timeline is the easy answer to me. And I felt like we weren't going to see anything because of this early signing period window. You have too many prospects and moms and dads who have relationships with, say, a Florida State assistant coach or an off-field staffer or Derek Ray. Why are you going to make a move before the early signing period? This is another trouble with the calendar. Kids are going to sign, and then there's going to be staff changes. It's not great for a prospect or a mom or a dad, but this is the reality of college football, and it's not just a Florida State issue. It's across the country. I don't know how to thoroughly evaluate Derek Ray and Mike Norvell from a talent acquisition standpoint, because it is about the money. I know Jerry Cutts has reported that the money has fluctuated, that there was money in certain years. There wasn't as much money in 2024, in his view and his reporting, to build that roster. That's not excusing 2 and 10. I'm not trying to. I'm just saying there wasn't as much money for that 24 group. So did it get better in 25 on the field? Statistically, in some areas, yes, not in the win-loss column. It's a really tough evaluation of these guys because it's based on as much what you see on tape, and then can you build that relationship? And then do you have the money to even get them on campus? Because there's a lot of coaches and a lot of GMs are saying maybe a prospect doesn't even make it because the mom, the dad, or the agent says, you don't have the number. You're not giving me the number that even tells me we're coming on a visit. That's a tough discussion in a new age too, right? I mean, we're dealing with a lot of different factors as far as evaluating somebody who's in a very critical role of acquiring talent.
One of the things that Tom and I have talked about a couple of different occasions is the role of a true general manager or a GM. At the NFL level, you've got the head coach and you got the general manager. At the college level, it used to be the head coach and the athletic director. Well, now you're going to put someone in that we'll just call a general manager. And that does two things. Number one, it takes some of the, and I'll be blunt, it takes some of the authority and the control away from the head coach. And a lot of college head coaches are going to resist that. So that then means if you do get a true general manager, is the head coach still persuading them? How much pushback does the general manager have to say, no, coach, you don't want that kid, you want this kid? And how's that going to work? And it does create a unique dynamic, at least not one we've seen at the collegiate level.
Well, UF just hired a new head football coach and a new general manager like on the same day, and those hires were not related. They were bringing one in regardless of whether the head coach came, right? So how is that going to unfold?
You got to have alignment to some extent, right? You have to have some type of philosophical alignment of what player you're looking for. Can I use the Martin Mayhew thing again? Like he's talked about why certain NFL teams work really well. I think he mentioned the Seahawks in particular back when they had that run with Pete Carroll. He said Pete Carroll's GM knew exactly what type of player they were looking for as far as that's a guy that fits the scheme. We talked about the Steelers and how they've had coaching continuity with Mike Tomlin and Bill Cowher and all. They had enough continuity, whereas Martin Mayhew said at the Lions, I believe he said 7 years he was in a high executive role. They constantly flipped the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. They had no second year to build off of those guys. So I think there has to be some level of philosophical alignment of that's a Florida State player that fits our scheme. That's a guy we can win with. That's a guy we can develop. It's tough. It's just not easy right now, but you have to find those personalities that mesh. Yes.
All right, we'll take another break, come back, continue this conversation. It is signing day and or signing week. And it's also we're still in mourning after last Saturday, but we've done a nice job of not talking too much about it so far, guys. Maybe we'll change that when we come back on Front Row Noles.
The Osceola, which has provided Seminole fans reliable Florida State sports coverage for 44 years, has launched the Osceola Shop, a merchandise store exclusively with Osceola's iconic branded polos, t-shirts, caps, and drinkware. Like the Osceola? Rock its iconic brand with our merch at theosceolashop.com. Are you an Osceola subscriber yet? You join today at a 31% discount and get full access to all our reporting, as well as $25 off your first purchase at the Osceola Shop, as well as 15% off all future purchases at the Osceola Shop and purchases of FSU licensed merchandise at alumnihall.com.
We are back, Tom, KJ, and Bob. Hope you guys are having a good week as we continue this conversation. We're not going to dive into the weeds on who has inked with Florida State today. It just doesn't fit the our once a week hour-long show format, right? But we're talking more big picture here. Let me ask you about this, Bob. There's I don't even know. I'm not going to get all the terminology right, but and I don't think that the Power 2 or Power 4 conferences have all signed it, but there's been a push to try and get everybody to sign on with actually honoring the salary cap, for lack of a better term, and making NIL dollars truly NIL dollars and having real repercussions that would force people to play by the rules. And sort of the talk is Florida State is trying to adhere to what the defined salary cap is, and everybody else is still the wild, wild west, and they're spending whatever they want out there. I don't know if that's accurate. I don't know if we're any closer to people getting to a point where, when I say real ramifications, not like your head coach gets suspended for a game, like your team can't go to the playoff this year because you egregiously violated the spirit of NIL. Where is that heading, do you think, Bob? I mean, are we going to get there? Is that 5 years down the road? Is it pipe dream, Pollyanna?
It kind of feels pipe dream. And I want to remind people, we came out of the first 6 months of this year where you could front load contracts. All apologies to Texas Tech. I think they've done a great coaching job and they've navigated the schedule well, but they front loaded so many contracts. There's some national stories about how big of a budget has been poured into that roster, and it's going to help them not just this year, but in years to come. I don't know where we're going. I do know where fans want things. I think fans want some type of database so that they can see, what do the players' salaries look like? What are these? Is there some transparency in the NIL deals? What do the contracts look like? I don't think we're close to seeing a lot of transparency. And it's an interesting discussion because I think in the NFL, you can see just about any player's salary. It's been reported by various, I won't say news outlets, but maybe tracking services that put those salaries together. I think fans are used to knowing, okay, that player earns this, or he's going to earn that much more in the following year. There's some kind of step structure to it. I think college football fans want to know it. I don't feel like we're close to finding out with any type of transparency where this is going.
And you won't. This is not going to happen until you have a collective bargaining agreement. And I don't know how you get one of those in the college era. But that's the only reason the NFL is able to, or folks are able to know what the NFL is doing, is because the NFLPA has agreed to let that happen. Can you imagine if the NCAA, the college football playoff, or the commissioner of football, if we ever had one, put out an edict that on, June 30th, every school has to declare how much money they paid to every individual player through the House settlement and the NIL agreement. Can you imagine how many lawsuits would be filed immediately after that, unless and until you get that CBA type of arrangement?
Yeah, well, Keith, that goes back to everything we've talked about that, in our opinion, I don't want to speak for you, would make college football better if everybody split media revenue equally. if there was a national pool of referees instead of conference referees, if everybody played the same amount of non-conference games and you had the same tiebreakers for each, I don't know if they'd still be conferences instead of the ACC getting panned right now for how they set up their tiebreaker that has Duke going in, right? Is that ultimately what people want, though? Do we want NFL light and more balance and fairness and equity, or do we just want to continue to enjoy the chaos that is college football, where we get mad that a committee gets together and says, well, yeah, I did watch Miami beat Notre Dame, but you know what? Notre Dame's going to get the last playoff spot anyway, even though they have the same record, because that was 3 months ago. And if they played again, I'd take Notre Dame.
That's interesting. I tell folks all the time, I get accused of stereotyping people, this group versus that group, or that group versus this group. And I remind people, I'm not stereotyping. We're all human. It's human nature to lean this way or lean that way. It's not a Southern versus a Northern thing. It's not a college versus NFL. It's who we are and what we are. We want to know that information, but yet we don't want to think far enough ahead to consider what knowing that information might mean. Yeah, we want to know all this, but oh, wait a minute, that changed college football. We don't like it. We don't like it. Well, it's too late. The cat's already out of the bag, as they say. That's the ground we're in. Guys, it's the same thing. Everybody forgets. Remember when Oklahoma and Georgia sued the NCAA over television rights? And it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said the NCAA cannot control TV revenue for football. All the athletic directors went ape, crazy. They had no idea, because they had all relied on ticket sales and booster contributions. TV revenue was not a thing in the mid-'80s. Look where we are now. What does house settlement money, NIL, look like 25 or 40 years from now?
I know right now we have chaos with even this college football, who's in the top 12. We knew this was going to happen, right? As far as we jumped from 4, we jumped to 12, and there's already, well, is Miami deserving? Is BYU deserving? I know I saw Miami beat Notre Dame, but we're still having a discussion over who should be ranked higher. Is Miami in the top 12 or not? Is the ACC going to be deserving if Duke brings chaos? What if FSU alum Manny Diaz pulls off the Duke beats Virginia scenario? Then what's that next day going to look like too? I would say
that next day is going to look like Duke not being in the playoff. That's what it's going to look like.
But also, this is great for clicks, for national media, and this is great for ratings for ESPN. These Tuesday night shows must do phenomenal numbers because people are just going, what are they throwing at the television?
That's right? Sort of that's what I'm saying, Bob. Like, do we really enjoy this? And so we'd rather keep it this way, because we sit here and talk about it every year. Like at the NFL, nobody is going to have this kind of conversation about whether the Chiefs were deserving to slide into the playoffs this year, because there's criteria if they make it. They did A, B, and C, and that came out ahead of the other teams, and thus they got the last spot. But we don't spend hours going, well, when they played Buffalo this year, the Bills had 5 guys hurt, but the Chiefs had 12 guys. Like, none of that's into the conversation that we talk about here with college football. This is just how we exist. I don't know. So I don't know if the answer, like in theory, I want to see it like personally, like NFL light. Let's have some defined criteria. Let's take the human, the eye test out of it. Let's actually define rules, play by the same rules. But in practice, maybe this would be a really boring podcast. Maybe it is anyway. I don't know. If we didn't sit here and discuss these things and rail about the targeting rule on an annual basis, Keith, which is still screwed up, by the way.
I had no doubt what side of the equation you fell on, Mr. Block.
Well, there's been, now that I've gone there, Keith, the last 2 weeks, NC State and Florida, there were 2 calls that to me were obvious targeting, neither one of which actually got upheld as targeting. And I'm like, I have no idea anymore. So.
Agreed.
What's a catch? What's a targeting call? What do we know? Yeah,
Deuce Robinson has certainly introduced us into the what's a catch thing here with the double catching that he's had a couple times, right? How many reviews have we had on that? All right, we got one more segment to go. We'll take a break and come back and finish up right after this on Front Row Noles.
Since 1982, the Osceola has provided reliable coverage of Seminole sports and now offers a free daily newsletter with the option to upgrade to full access with a paid subscription. For more information about free or premium subscriptions, visit theosceola.com. Get 31% off your first year subscription and receive $25 off any Osceola branded merch. Visit theosceola.com.
We are back on Front Row Noles. What are we, 22 days till Christmas Day? So Keith and I like to send a fair warning. Usually we do it about a week out, but we'll go ahead and give you, 3 weeks and a day here to get your shopping done. Let's step aside from football real quick. Soccer, basketball, there's other things going on. Would you like to start with the positive or the not as positive there, gents, given those two?
KJ, we're going to go soccer. You want basketball? What do you want to do?
Let's go soccer. We like that. We like that part.
All right, so soccer's into the College Cup again. It's just what they do, right? Last year was such an aberration. We were stunned when they got upset in the second round. Like, what in the world is going on? And then this year, lo and behold, they get sent on the road. Felt like the committee got together and said, hey, this is a year Florida State's not quite as dominant as what they've been, so we'll just stick them on the road, kind of balance it out for previous years. And lo and behold, FSU wins. They get a break in their bracket with Ohio State pulling an upset. And now FSU, I think they play TCU this week, right? So they're in the College Cup. Should they win that, it likely would be Stanford, who already beat FSU this year. Bob, I don't know how much you've seen the soccer team play, but if you're down to the Final Four and you got all your international parts and pieces back and you're playing pretty well, it feels like Florida State's got just as good a chance as anybody to go win the thing.
Right. They play Friday night against TCU. A team that they've played a few times in the last couple of years. So there's some familiarity there among the programs. I think an interesting storyline when we talked to Brian Penske on Tuesday was he knew that October schedule was going to be brutal. He knew there was going to be some losses and some ties. He told an interesting anecdote how he was removed from a family group text chat because they didn't want him seeing their texts about how the program was going in October, how they were performing on the field. And he kept saying, we're good, we're good, we're good. And then I asked him as a follow-up a couple questions later, were the players feeling good through those losses and ties? And he said historically they've been pretty tough on themselves after losses, but he felt like this team had a lot of maturity, a lot of girls who had played, won a College Cup, won a national title. And I think there was enough of that, been there, done that, as a freshman, sophomore, that now as a junior, senior, you feel good about things. And yeah, so the ACC being what the SEC and the Big Ten are in college football, the ACC is the best college soccer conference on the women's side for sure. That's a tough schedule through your regular season, and it truly prepares you for the postseason. So I think when you have this level of talent, depth, experience, you know how I feel about Jordan Dudley. She's an all-world, all-class player. I would definitely pay to watch her play. I think she's the best women's sports athlete on this campus, and she's been fantastic to watch. I believe 2 goals in the last match. So I don't know if this team's going to win a national title. It's too hard to handicap how the matchups look and all that. But I feel this team getting this point is a huge accomplishment. And can they do it? I think they've got as good a shot as anybody.
I'm just impressed with how they conduct themselves, how they handle themselves. One of the things that jumped out at me when you were talking, Bob, about the early schedule is that's become a little bit of a norm within the Olympic sports. Lonnie has done it on the softball side, where you schedule those tough series early in the season so that you challenge yourself as opposed to, just cupcakes and games and matches that you expect to win. And that goes a long way as you get toward the postseason and in the postseason as to mature your club. And transitioning, we're even seeing a little bit of the same thing with Luke and the basketball team. I mean, they got blown out big time, but they're playing very tough competition, which come February or March, is going to pay some dividends, I think, in terms of developing the basketball side of the program.
Georgia beats them last night pretty good, and that's a second straight lopsided loss. The thing to me, well, Bob, you and I were talking off air. I mean, this is not a team that's constructed to rebound well. They just don't have the personnel to do that. So they're going to get out rebounded pretty regularly. The 3-point shooting percentage, and they shoot a ton of them, it has dropped. I'm looking at the season stats, which would include last night. They're at 31.5%, which is still okay. You'd like to see that higher, but the last couple games, including the one, I guess it was against Bakersfield, I went to that game. It's been more in the low to mid 20s on a per game for 3 games. So I guess my question there is, yes, live and die by the 3, but it's going to be a lot more of the latter if you're going to shoot 20 to 25% in a game compared to getting north of 30. I'm not even talking about shooting 40%, but if you're going to shoot that many, you got to at least be close to hitting a third, don't you think? I mean, yeah. So really, what I'm driving at, as they continue to shoot and get used to Luke's system, do you see this improving this year a little bit, or is it going to be a personnel thing as he, gets his guys in that he really wants in subsequent years here?
I think when we went into this year, we kind of felt like this could be about a 500 team. They were going to struggle in a lot of areas, rebounding among them. Again, the cost of acquiring talent, a true center is probably going to cost you a couple of offensive tackles in terms of what it costs in the revenue sharing era. That's a lot. That's money that Forsyth just doesn't have for college basketball. So Luke is making do with what he has. I think, yes, you have to make 3-pointers the way his offense is drawn up. The Georgia game was although very, very frustrating, yes, to watch, those were good looks. Those were good looks that didn't fall from 3, from inside the lane, blocked at the rim a couple times too. I'm not saying that they were close to winning that game. I still don't think when you add them all up that they were close. They missed some free throws too. But this is a team that had that mindset of they missed a bucket that they thought they should have made and then didn't go and run down the court and play defense. And I think that's what made Luke Lauk so mad post-game, measured in his words. And he didn't call out anybody, but he said the effort has to get better. He's really going to challenge these guys as far as, okay, if you're going to play, I'm going to reward you with minutes, but I can reward you with bench time too if you're not going to put it out there. I would argue they still have to get better play inside too. You have to find ways to use an Alex Steen, to use a Chauncey Wiggins, to use your posts to take the pressure off the emphasis of a 3-point shot. If they play well, if they play better, I think it loosens up and makes it easier to shoot threes. I mean, it has to be a true kind of wide view of it. Is it going to get better in the short term? Houston's on Saturday night, and that's a top 10 team. So in the short term, no. But I'll be very curious how they stack up against some of the ACC schools that I'd say are middle tier. I think they can be competitive. I think they can be a 500 team.
And we've always said the one thing you can always control is your effort, and impressing upon the kids, rewarding them or taking it away as a reward for playing time. We're only 9 games into the season, whatever it is. The kids got to learn Luke, and Luke's got to learn the kids, and hopefully that perception will change. In terms of being frustrated when you miss a 3 and not really coming back and playing on the defensive end.
Keith, I feel like your effort's been pretty good today. Do you feel like you've brought your A game? I mean, well, you don't really have an A game. It's kind of a B game on a good day.
I would give myself a B-. I'd give myself a B-. I'm not like Tommy. I'm not going to tell you this is the best show of the year, but it's in the top third.
Okay, all right. Finishing up on football, guys. Mike Norvell normally, not just Mike Norvell. Well, I guess it would pertain to Mike Norvell because there's only been a multiple day signing period under Mike Norvell. But historically, name the coach, there's always been a press conference with the head football coach at about 4:00 in the afternoon on Wednesday when signing day starts. And this year, that is not the case. Mike Norvell's presser is on Friday, which means either A, they've got huge recruits that they're trying to flip or land on Thursday and Friday, Bob, or B, they're just coming at it from a practical way and saying, why don't we just move this back so that if somebody asks me on Wednesday about a kid who hasn't quite signed because he's going to do so 3 hours from now, I don't have to play the game of tap dancing and not mentioning a name, and let's just wait till Friday when the hay's in the barn. So which is it of those two? Clearly the first one is more fun to think about, Bob, but which is the answer?
Honestly, I think there are some guys who are going to be signing on Thursday. So that could be a development, is they just want to talk once the class is settled in. The interesting thing is honestly, I think a lot of the money has been allocated to certain guys, and they know what they're going to get, and they know that they're going to sign with whatever school, whether it's Florida State or somewhere else. So I think to some extent, does the money, the rev share, the potential NIL deals that might be out there, has that settled signing day to some extent? Now there have been a ton of decommitments, been a ton of shifting throughout September, October, November. But I wonder if when you get down to the final few days, if the coaches can feel pretty good, maybe sleep a little bit better about who's coming, then again, we could talk next week and things could have gone chaotic. But I get the feel that who is locked in, so to speak, is locked in.
I hope you're right. Obviously the messaging that gets out on the national media is always about who decommits. I was reading something Monday or Tuesday, and they were talking about a 3-star offensive guard decommitting from one school and committing to another school. And I'm just thinking to myself, we've gotten to the point where, even the rank and file players, just the good college kids that are going to come in and play, they're now getting press time when they commit or decommit. It's not just the 5 stars or the off the chart people anymore. My goodness, it is a new world. It is a new world and a constantly changing world.
That it does. All right, gentlemen, we're finished for now. I think, unless there's anything else anybody would like to add, or are we good?
I'm good.
Finish right on that B- note like we typically do.
It's a passing grade, right?
I got nothing.
It is a passing grade. It is a passing grade. All right, folks, have a good week. We'll do this again next week. You won't have to listen to Keith and I recap Saturday's affairs on Sunday. For another 40 weeks, we're in the clear, Keith. So we have to do that again.
Sounds good.
All right, he's Bob. He's Keith. I'm Tom. This is Front Row Noles.